This is by Dr. Craig Ellison from Alliance Christian College in New York. And I picked this up at the first Christian Counseling Association meeting that I had the privilege to attend. And there was actually a test score that went with this that you could score at the end, and I can't find my answer key, so I can't even give that to you. So, you know, you're just going to have to go out of this class not knowing if you have good self-esteem or self-worth or not. But some of his thoughts, I believe, are going to be helpful to us. And if you want to realize who you are and what your value is, you have to determine that first and foremost by God. I mean, how do you decide what to purchase? What's some of the factors that go into what you're going to buy? Price? Why does that matter? Oh, you don't have unlimited resources. I'm sorry. So price, is it valuable enough for me to spend this much money on it? Or do I have enough money?
Another thing would be features. Like, does it have what I actually needed to have for that much money?
All right. And when you're deciding whether to not, or not to purchase it, what if you do have enough money? Josh?
I'm weird, but I always walk into a place, and I'm that stupid guy that walks around the store with a bunch of stuff and then puts it all down and realizes, I don't really need this anyway, because I just think about it, and I actually think, how many hours did I work for me to buy this one thing, or whatever it is, like, and like, if I have to, they're not going to be worth, it may be worth that much money, but it's not worth that much of my time.
So you're assessing a value to it, too. Now, the store has assessed a value and put a price tag on it. But you assess a value to say, am I really willing to spend that much or to work that many hours and then spend it on this? Or you might see something that you really, really want, and you save and save and you work and because you value it. You put a value on it. God has put a value on us. And the problem is we put a value on us. And it's usually not the same. God values us far more than we value ourselves. Now, there seems to be a few people that are exceptions to that. But most of us put a lower price tag on us than he does. I mean, after all, what was his price tag for you?
Jesus.
Yeah. He loves you enough to give his son. As Romans 8 says, if he already gave you his son, will he not freely give us all things that we need? What would he hold back now? I mean, he already invested the best that he had. Why would he not give us something else if we need it? Only if it's not to our benefit. So God has placed the value on us. And for you or me to live like we don't have value and waste our lives and just live it for superficial things is really very disrespectful to the God that placed the value on us and invested in us. You and I are obligated to be at our best and to let God make us what he created us to be, redeemed us to be, and called us to be. We're obligated. He's the one that purchased us. We're not our own. We're bought with a price. So first and foremost, you need to find your value in him. And then I think you need to learn to figure out who you are. And everybody by now has probably heard me talk about already the figure out your gifts and your weaknesses, your strengths and your weaknesses. Excuse me. And that was an exercise I did, and it really helped me accept who I am. Remember we talked about positive thinking? One of the aspects of positive thinking is just realistic thinking. You know, on my list of strengths, there is an omission there, and it is not, I don't have singing on my list of strengths. Okay? Now that's realistic. That's not false humility. That is realistic, okay? But I have some other things on there. And things that I wrestled with because I didn't place much value on me. I didn't. I saw all my weaknesses. I dare say there's some of you that are good at seeing your weaknesses. And when I started this thing, I was going to list my strengths and weaknesses, and on the right side of the paper were the weaknesses, and I filled that up really fast. It was just like it was a no-brainer. I saw those things all the time. I just listed them right down. Then I started working on the strengths, and it was like, what are my strengths? Do I have any? Yeah, I was looking as perplexed as you are as you look at me. And you're sitting there thinking, yeah, come to think of it, what would they be? I have some, trust me, okay? And I started to list some, and I remember arguing with myself. I remember saying, yeah, well, I'm not really that good at it. I mean, so-and-so's better, and if so-and-so's better, then that means I'm no good, right? That's catastrophizing. No, somebody's always better, or at least you're certainly going to think that. It'd be pretty hard to be the absolute best at something in the whole world, okay? I mean, you might be, but, not in too many characteristics, no offense. And so I list those and I started accepting, no, actually I am pretty good at that. And for the first time in my life, I accepted who Richard Miles is. First time. I was much older than you, and I'm ashamed to admit that. But it made a big, big difference in my life. It was like, okay, I'd have my weaknesses. I have my areas where I'm not good. So's everybody else. I'm not unique in that. There's some things on the weaknesses I wish weren't there, and I try to work on those, and hopefully they're less glaring weaknesses than they once were. But, hey, they're still there. And when I listed these, I saw those weaknesses, and I kind of chuckled. I thought, man, those are the same things I've seen for years. Now, some people that don't know me well might not even see some of those weaknesses. And I mean, I don't publish them in the Revivalist or anything, and so they might not know them. Now, people that know me well, they probably know those, and maybe a few I didn't put on the list. But I've improved on some of them. I really have. But I call them my default. If I'm not careful, if I get careless, I start living in my own resources, which is, I think he means, that's what happens when you start living in the flesh. That's why we become vulnerable to sin. We live in our own resources. We're not depending on God like we should. I start thinking negatively, or I start listening to feelings instead of reality. And I start drifting back to my default weaknesses. Fortunately, most of the time I catch that and realize what's happening. And so I think that'd be a good practice for you. Figure out who you are. Get a family member, a close friend. Start your list. And in that list, I also have like life situations. I had one person that I gave that assignment to, and they had a chronic illness that may be something they live with for life. And it just really depressed the person. And I understand that. And but she got to the point when she did this assignment, she said, this illness is a part of who I am. And I'm either going to have to accept it, or I'm going to have to fight against it and be miserable the rest of my life. She said, this illness makes me miserable enough. Why should I add to it? And she really, it seemed to be a changing point in her. And it's sad to have to accept something like that. But when you can't change your circumstances, what can you change?
Your attitude.
Thank you. Your attitude. And it makes a huge difference. I can remember getting negative. I know that stuns you. but I can remember getting negative and looking at the bad and thinking, oh, this is terrible, and remembering the scripture and everything, give thanks. And starting to practice it. I can remember the first big lesson of that in my life, when something was going on and I was getting all upset about it, and it was like, in everything give thanks. And I started getting so blessed. I mean, I was really genuinely blessed. And I was praising the Lord and so thankful. And when I got back home after this, and I was just rejoicing in the Lord, and lo and behold, if I didn't do something dumb, like lock my keys in the car in a wintry, rainy day, and just had gotten that car, and the only set of keys I had, and so I was out in this cold rain, and my wife was expecting me to take her somewhere that she was really looking forward to. And, you know, guys don't like to disappoint their gals, you know, hope not. And so here I was praising the Lord and so happy about how He'd helped me through this last little debacle that was going on in my life. And, you know, after that, everything's supposed to go really nice because I was praising the Lord and I was rejoicing. And so, you know, that just requires that I get a reward, right? Like locking my keys in the car in the cold rain. I was soaked, I was cold, and I was starting to get very frustrated again. I said, Lord, thank you. And I started thinking of the things I could be thankful for. How God had worked out that I got that car. I had one that broke down. I couldn't afford another one, and God had worked it out. And the problem I was complaining about before was the car was giving me trouble. And I was thinking, oh, great, now I've got this car, you know, and all this trouble. Anybody identify with that? And but I should have been thankful. I mean, I got the car for half the price that it was worth, and it was amazing how it all worked out. So what if I had a little, and it was really not a real big problem, but it felt big. And you know what felt big? My attitude. My negative attitude, focusing on the problem instead of saying, Lord, I don't like that this happened. This is kind of aggravating. But Lord, I want to thank you for the way you worked out these things so that I could even have this transportation. So, you know, even when you start doing this, you know, don't get in the mindset that I did, well, things are going to go great now. You might just be called on to be thankful for some more things. But I'm going to tell you what, it works. And doesn't have to be fake, because in everything there are things to be thankful for. It just depends on what you choose to look at and to appreciate. I can either focus on the bad, and I can do that. Anybody else can do that? I can do that. And or I can focus on the good. And there's nobody else that can do that and make that decision but me or you. All right? Find and commit. His first point is find and commit yourself to God's special purposes for you. You have a unique role to play and special gifts, including your personality. That fits into what I was just telling you. Figure out who you are. What are those gifts? What personality are you? One of the things I do in relationship counseling or marriage counseling is I talk to them about their temperaments and their personalities. You know, if you don't understand why this person is like this, it's very helpful to figure it out. You know, it may not be that they're trying to be mean to you. They're not this sensitive person that you are. They're more straightforward. They just like things to be just plain and blunt. But if you're a sensitive person, that feels hurtful. And when you realize that, you need to start working on that, especially if it's in a marriage. And you start moving toward each other to try to make the other one know that they're appreciated. But you also have to have understanding for the other person's personality and temperament.